Rude. Yeah, but you'll get my but I have to believe this. Potatoes not.
All righty.
Melina.
All righty. All right. All righty, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So fill in wherever you can. All righty, so in accordance with Article 2, Sections 2 to 7 of our bylaw, I'm officially calling the annual meeting of the Hallmark Condominium Unit Owners Association to order, and it is 7 o'clock sharp. For those of you that don't attend the board meetings as frequently, my name is Tom Soul. I'm the president of the association. Next up, the first order of business after the call to order is the quorum. I've been informed by Melina through the elections committee that a quorum of 57% of the voting interest of the association has been reported. And the election committee has reported that today. And then per the bylaws, quorum is anything over 50% of the total ownership interest present in person or by proxy. So we have achieved the quorum and it is duly noted. That's really important because we don't have to do this all over again. And pay for it. Next up, roll call and reading of the minutes. These next two items do require votes. And I'll explain briefly how it's going to work. Unlike a regular board meeting, this is a meeting of the association, membership thereof. So all those times that you wished you could put your hand up on Zoom or vote on a matter during a board meeting, and I hopefully gently told you that that was out of order at the time. Today's the day where the association is meeting and not a board meeting. So I do call for yeas and nays that it would apply to the entire association. So you will have marked your ballots either to simply record your presence with no votes to be cast on any matter, or you appointed someone as your proxy to vote your ballot as instructed and to vote on any other matters that the board sees fit. At this year's annual meeting, other matters are simply administrative. So there are no substantive matters before the association. The main business, of course, is to report out the election results. Everything else is more of an administrative in nature. So once I've called for the required motions, I'll simply state that I, who am in possession of any proxies, will vote in favor of those motions because they are routine business. Okay. I'll call for a motion. If you'd like to make the motion, please raise your hand, either in person or on Zoom to raise your hand button. I'll take two names for the mover and the seconder, and then afterwards we'll call the roll and take the vote. All right, so let's start with the roll call. I'll entertain a motion and a second to waive the calling of a roll. Otherwise, we have to read out the entire roster of membership. Please use the hand raise or raise your hands here in person if you would like to make the motion to waive the calling of the roll. And I'll see Donna Fossum has moved and T. Carter has seconded. So for the record, those are the movers and seconder. Okay, and now we'll call the roll on that motion, or take the vote on that motion to waive the calling of the roll. So many as are in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. I should say before I say that, on behalf of all proxy unit owners, I vote for the motion, and it does indeed pass. All right, next up, so the calling of the roll has been waived. Next up is the election packet. Melina is going to hold up to the camera. The election package was mailed to all unit owners at their address of record as required by the bylaws. I'm informed that they were mailed on April 11th of this year, and Melina, for proof thereof, is holding up a specimen of the election packet. All right. The second item requiring a vote is the reading and approval of the minutes from last year's meeting, the 2024 meeting. You received them also in your election package, and they have been available on the website since soon after last year's meeting. They were also recently posted on the bulletin board. All right, and now it's time for our second motion of the night. Would anyone like to move and someone to second the motion to waive the reading of the minutes of the 2024 meeting and approve them as presented? Would anyone like to make that motion? Somebody, who's moving that in the back there?
Patrick O'Brien.
Patrick O'Brien is moving and
Michelle Lewis.
Michelle is, 1211 is seconding, all right? That motion is on the table. All those in favor of this motion to waive the readings of the minutes and to approve them as presented, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, indicate by saying no. On behalf of any unit owners who have given me their proxy, I vote for this motion and the minutes are approved as presented. All right, those are the two items requiring votes this evening. Next up are just a few reports, the most important being the treasurer's report, which we'll give plenty of time for. My report for the evening is just really to reflect on the last year and, kind of where we are and where we've been in the last 12 months. And when I was thinking about this, I didn't really realize how much had gone on in the last 12 months. When we sat here 12 months ago and Mark was in my position and Ginger was Mark was here in this position. Ginger was I was the treasurer. Yeah, Ginger was over there. Now she's on the board. I was the treasurer. But also above and beyond that, I mean, when we met last year, we had a different general manager, a different building engineer. We now have 2 new members of the board, so 40% turnover there. So, I mean, it's been a year of a lot of change when you look back on it. But I think we have persevered through those changes very well. I do think that we've taken things in stride. It's a lot to digest in the course of a year. But it's also, I think, a year marked by some progress on some major issues. We are, as you know, moving closer. We're as close as we've ever been towards actually executing on the window facade project. We'll have further updates this coming week at the regular board meeting, but we did approve and I did sign the letter of intent for that contract going forward. And we're now moving towards the next stage, which is to get to executing the contract itself and then the financing part that follows from that. And so I'll leave that to others to discuss in greater detail. And also within the last couple of weeks, really, we passed the long spoken about smoking resolution that will come into effect on June 1st. And so please do take a look at in the elevators, if that's where you get your information, or from the website, to familiarize yourself with the new non-smoking policy at the building, in the building and in the grounds, not just the building. Because that does come into effect on June 1st. And that's just, a very short time away from that. So that's, where the way I see it, like those are the 2 major things to report on from the past year. At the beginning of this board year, I said that I had 3 goals, and we surveyed on these last summer, and one was to move forward on the window project. The second was to do the smoking, dispense with the smoking question, and the third was parking. Those are the 3 things that I surveyed, we surveyed last year. Of those 3, I think, the smoking check, we've addressed it. The window project, we're ever so close. And the parking, we're gonna, the next board, however it's composed, will be prioritizing that starting as early as this week. So that's just sort of my thoughts on where we are and where we've been, and kind of thinking back on how much has changed in just a year. But that we've gotten through it pretty well as a community, and I think we can be proud of our resiliency and our flexibility. So that's my president's report, or musings thereupon. And next up, committee reports. We don't really have any committee reports, but what I will say is we would like to recognize and thank once again the outgoing co-chairs of the social committee. T and Joe are stepping back from that role, and so therefore that committee is needs new members and needs chair. So I will use the committee report section of this annual meeting to call for people who may be interested in participating on a social committee, or even to chair it. And of course, we all thank T and Joe for all the wonderful parties, and I'm sure they will advise the new social committee chairs on how to pull them off in such fine style. So thank you again, and if anybody's interested, please do let us know and we can reconstitute the social committee for you, okay? All right, that brings us to the treasurer's report, and I will now give the floor over to our treasurer, Ginger Boston, for a statement on our financial condition.
There we go. Yep, there it is. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ginger Boston, and I will be presenting the annual treasurer's report. We'll start with a brief overview of the status of our reserves. Our reserves are invested with Morgan Stanley and are insured by FDIC. Currently, our total reserves are at approximately 4.16 million. We have an annual contribution to that from our normal condo fees of 845,000. And next year, our projected interest is reduced a bit to 75,000, and that's because we're going to be spending a lot of that, about half of that money going towards the major project, which will impact and lower our interest. We have a mix of CDs, bonds, and interest-bearing savings. Next slide. This is just a graphical representation. People are like, hey, we're putting money into reserves. We are. For a long time, our reserves were hovering at a very low number. And over the last, since 2018, we have been steadily increasing in a very upward trajectory so that we could have a substantial base to start this new project. And the goal is that we're going to keep moving in this direction because we have other big projects coming, but we're going to have a big dip next year on the graph. Next slide. How much of that can we touch? 2.6 million of it is available for projects with the statutory minimum not being touched of 1.5 million. Next slide. So that's what's going on with our reserves. Next, I'm going to talk about operations, which is the day-to-day business of running the building. Here, simple report card. Green, you're doing great. Yellow, could do a little bit better. Green, we're doing great. So income, our money's coming in, looking good. Delinquencies, a little bit of an increase to what we're used to. We've been talking about that if you've been coming to the board meetings. For the last few months, you've heard us mention that our delinquencies are up a bit, but we're under control. Legal is here today, even heard news before the meeting that we're making progress towards one of the units that we're taking action against to recoup our costs. So I believe, so my point is we're managing that. And expenses, we're on track to break even at the end of the 12-month window, which ends at the end of June. We could maybe even be better than breaking even, which is a positive thing. Next slide. So this is where the drum roll is. Next year. Clapping. This is where you clap. So, how do we get here? This is like a number y'all didn't expect to see. Now, this does not include the window project. This is the operating budget. What's it cost to run the building? We wanted to separate this so that so we're listening. We are looking at committee that we didn't brief. Little finance budget committee. Kyle and I and Melina and Dave have been spending hours and hours looking at the numbers, looking at actuals, looking at trending data. What is the right number? There was a lot of times we kept going up, but the actuals were actually running down. So we're looking at the actuals, we're reducing. We had some opportunities where we were putting away big chunks of money, but we weren't touching it for preventative reasons. And we're like, so what we did was we basically just right-sized it, right? We looked at the numbers and we let the numbers tell us what we should do. And we were able to come up with this number. Now, this doesn't mean it's not going to cost you more next year. We're saying your monthly condo fees, we're not going to do an increase. So whatever your rate was in 25 would be the rate for fiscal 26. Now we'll get into the bad news, which is we got to still pay for the window project, but at least you're not paying for, you don't have two increases, you have one increase. So this is, the intent is, this is good news. Next slide. So reserve study major projects. real simple. We got the envelope masonry window project. Based on the current bids, you've been coming to the meetings. We've been talking about this number for a while now. We're looking at a worst case big number about around 4.5 million. We want to not forget that we have other major projects on the cusp. We still have scheduled, officially scheduled for this year or in this window, based on the reserve study recommendations, a balcony cracks and spalling, for roughly $1 million. We've got the garage waterproofing, that's another $1 million to $1.5 million. So we're still gonna need about $1 million a year. So we need to continue to put money into the reserves so that we have the money for the next year's project after the interest and everything else. Okay, so that's kind of our starting point. So next is the monies. So hopefully this is big enough for you to read. If not, we'll make sure it's available on the website. Basically the top little gray block is what's the cost estimate. It includes the cost of the CA Lindman, which is the windows and masonry vendor who was here a few months ago. What they told us to add about a 10% for possible tariffs, recommended adding 1.8% for a bond that covers in case work doesn't get done. It's basically our little insurance policy, and $148,500 for TDL for our engineering organization, brings us in roughly at the 4.5 million that I briefed earlier. Now that's what is our cost estimate. Now, available funds, as I said earlier, we have 4.1 million in funds. I gotta not touch 1.5 because the state says we can't. That leaves us with 2.6 million in reserves. We also have about 500K we can grab out of our general operating funds that didn't get transferred over to reserves due to a technical glitch. So that gets us to about 3.16. When I have a high estimate and a low estimate for funding needed, the high estimate was if I don't touch that 500 that I have in operating funds. The low estimate is if I do touch that. But it's a way to give us somewhere in between 1.8 and 1.3 that we need to obtain some way. Right now, there's two options to do that. We can get a loan and add that to the monthly a monthly fee to all the units, or do a one-time lump sum chunk of money assessment. Next slide. So what might it cost me? So we have not signed an official contract yet, so we don't have anything official, can't lock into real numbers. Plus, as a lot of you all know, our fees are based on what unit you're in, how many square feet it has, how many bedrooms it has, how high from the floor you are. The first few floors are one rate, the next few floors are another rate, the top few floors are another rate. So in all that complicated math, I said, I'm just gonna divide by 220 and say plus or minus. So if we needed to just go do a quick assessment and say everybody paid their 220 share of the 1.8 million, high end, a one would be about $8,500, $8,470 per unit. The low side estimate was $6,198. So plus or minus 8,500, plus or minus 6,200. If we were to do a one-time assessment. So somewhere in that bracket, if we were to just ask for cash. If we're gonna do a loan, I went for the middle. I said, go me 1.6 mil. Right now, when the banks have to do the money, they've got to take whatever's in the reserve and add so much, blah, blah, blah. We've had two different financial institutions tell us that's gonna be around 7%. So we have a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, and 10-year option. We have an annual number, which is that fourth column there. What the far right column says is if we were to do 1.6 million for 10 years, divided by 220 units, plus or minus based on where you are in the building, $85 a unit per month, but for 10 years. If we were to do a 3-year loan, like the big difference would be, it'd be $225 a unit for 3 years per month. That's still a big hit. Honestly, I think if people can swing it, what Kyle and I have been brainstorming is, we're looking for a way, and we still haven't talked to legal and other people if we can do this. Right now, what we're looking at is we want to give people both options. If you can do upfront, do upfront. If you can't, we'll take the number of units, let's say it's 50% of the units. Again, we haven't vetted we can do this yet, but we're hoping we can. Then we only have to borrow in a loan. Half the people, $800,000. Then maybe when we divide all that out, the amount becomes a little bit more, palatable or whatever. I will say that if you can, it will, in the short end, it'll be less expensive if we do the one-time payment. Because then you're not paying the interest over many, many years. But you may be on a fixed income, and a lot of folks in the building are. You still may be better off taking a personal loan, doing like taking a loan out on your unit. That you could probably get the money cheaper than what we can get the money. But we're not making those decisions today. I'm just giving you numbers from a planning perspective, something to chew on. We have a board meeting where we officially talk about this, Tom, on Thursday. We still have some final things to do to lock the numbers in. But my goal was to give people ballpark windows of numbers to think about. And that is all I have to present.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Ginger, for the treasurer's report. Lots of good stuff to chew on. Before we go to unit owner Q&A, I wanted to mention, recognize and mention, thank a few people. Present here, of course, as always, is Melina Petaway, our general manager. So I'd like to single her out in particular. I'm going to mention a few people to thank, but I do want to stop and ask for a round of applause and appreciation. Thank you, Melina, for all of your good work and support for everything that we do. We also want to thank Evan, our building engineer, the porters and cleaners from Korea Cleaning. I want to thank our board secretary, Valerie Hardy, for all of the work she's done on the minute taking, all the other members of the board, of course. We do also have present our community manager from Legaman Norman, David Hahn. Thank you, David, for being here, and thank you to all the folks who support you and Melina behind the scenes at Legaman Norman. And lastly, before we move to unit owner Q&A, or actually next to last, I want to acknowledge Jessica Lawless Barnes, who's here from Reese Broom. Thank you to you and to Kristen and everyone else who was at Reese Broom supporting us on the legal front. And lastly, but very importantly, I want to thank the election committee, Jerry Minich, Bill George, and Jerry Mosman. In a situation like this where we have a small board and, a very small staff, the conduct of an election, becomes, you have to find trusted people who are willing, who have the trust of the community. And we're very grateful to the election committee because they perform an essential role in guarding the integrity of the ballot. I can certainly tell you, as the sitting president, I will find out the results at the same time as everybody else. We don't have any advance access to any of the documents. And so we really appreciate, we wouldn't be able to do this without you all. So thank you to the two Jerrys and Bill George for doing this, not only this year, but many, many years running. So thank you. All right, now we'll move to unit owner Q&A, and I'll open the floor for questions. Do the folks in person or online?
I do have one.
All right, we already have an online question, so shoot.
Just a thank you to me, I'm sorry.
Oh. There you go. Anybody, any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, so yes, name and unit number, please.
Sean Caviani, 206. I guess my question is more around the what hurdles might we be facing to give people an option to pay for the window project, whether upfront or do that. It's the option of paying.
Oh.
Because I think it financially it's cheaper to just pay it up front, but obviously makes, you gotta consider people, everybody's situation is different.
Want to take that?
Sure.
So I think the biggest hurdle is actually getting the final contract. So we put a letter of intent in to go under contract. But we are developing, or not developing, we are generating all the documentation that the banks want. And it's really gonna come down to how much we have to loan. So we like to do the options, so the more people, let's say 10% of the people, 20% pick a number, they can pay it up front. Well, that's that percentage less that we have to borrow, which then change the calculus for what's the rate gonna be, interest rate, as well as how much we have to borrow. And therefore, then it goes into the options of funding things. So it's really, we know we can cover the first couple of months of the contract pretty comfortably. And that's what we're hoping to do. And we're hoping to give all the owners some time in that to say, hey, you wanna pay up front, or do you wanna take the loan rate and pay over time? And if it's over time, the board's gonna pick, it's gonna be a 3-year, it's a 5-year, it's a 10-year, it's a whatever, 10-year, I really don't want to do, that's a lot of interest. But that way we can present the association with options. And then you guys, everybody will have time to think about, hey, do I wanna pay up front? Do I wanna go get my own personal loan, like a SoFi loan or something like that? Because the numbers we're getting are high 6, low 7s. And if we go past 5 years, all the banks say for this kind of a big loan, it's only, the rate's only good for 5 years. They reassess it after 5 years.
Right.
Do you know where we're gonna be as a nation in 5 years with our interest rates? I don't. So I like the idea of being more secure. So to your point, yeah, if those who can pay up front, it's better. It's also better for the association and those who can't, because they'll get a better rate. It'll be a lesser loan. So the biggest thing is the contract. Then we have to make sure use it over and protects our interest, make sure there's no legal jargon in there that'll come back and get us. And then once, I think those are probably the two biggest items. And I'll defer to you, Ginger, if you have anything to.
I think
Correct me
the
on
other piece that we have to just confirm, and we, this is the, you know, just making sure that the tools, the technology tools that we have can do it, so that, you know, can we give people 2 options, or do we have to tell everybody they have to do the same thing? So we just want to make sure that what we want to do, which is to do things that are to everybody's best interest. There are people that can and want to pay upfront, and there are people that can't. And we want to acknowledge that, and we want to make sure that we have options available for all of our people. What I have heard, and again, it's how good is the tool, right? What I want the carrot to be that if you pay up front, you don't have to pay the interest, but if you pay over time, you gotta pay the interest. So to Kyle's point, we want to give people a chance to chew on it. We don't have the exact numbers. We will in a few days, in a few weeks, probably. Once we know that, then we can kind of put that out in front of people. We want to be able to give people an opportunity to commit to one of the 2 solutions, and then we've got to get it logged with the system. And the bigger thing is, can the system keep up with all this? Can the system track that Ginger Boston did one thing, Tom Sewell did something else, Kyle Miller did something else? So we have to make sure that we have everything that, to me, that's the thing that makes me the most nervous, is do we have a tool that can keep up with this idea that we'd like to present to you all?
And Ginger or Kyle, if, for those who take a loan, are you allowed to pay that loan off early, or are you locked in for the 10, let's say?
We're looking for the one thing. If you're going through us,
Mhm.
if we're gonna take a 5-year loan out, then you're gonna pay over 5. Your
You're locked
unit
into
is gonna,
that.
your unit's stuck with that 5
Okay.
years. That we can't, I mean, or you're gonna be stuck with that interest, because, you know, we're taking out a 5-year loan for the building.
Mhm.
So I don't know, we have to play this is like that whole, we gotta figure it out. We gotta figure out what legal will let us do. Do you get a benefit if you pay off early?
Right.
Like, I don't.
Or a penalty, so there's some of them that are
Right.
penalties, so it's kind of, we kind of get locked in as an association for when we borrow, therefore, people that opt into that thing are kind of gonna get locked in with it as well. And then to the system piece, what she's referring to, the town square,
Yeah,
when you pay it, you pay your standard, you know, condo dues. This would be a separate line item if you took the loan, and we're working with town square as well as it's C3, C4 is your system? C3, so that's the funding line, and making sure Legal Norman can have that as a line of accounting in order to properly, you know, make sure everything lines up right. So we're doing our due diligence, making sure all those options and all those things work in order for the options that we want to provide. And then that way, when anyone gets presented an option, they know that we vetted it and it's good to go.
Any other questions? Donna?
The thought and something else that I'm sure you thought of. Is there any way that we could bring in a banker or something, sort of for an afternoon or a couple afternoons, and offer them to the residents to talk through privately, to talk through what are their options, what would work for them? Because I'm sure this is not something that the vast majority of people in the building ponder. You go through banking, loans, whatever, every time you write a check, no, the answer is. And just a thought, help people to come up with a decision that works for them. And that's one thought. And the other thing is, we also have to deal with the fact that people move. We're not dealing with a steady population here. So we've got people who are moving into a loan and others that are walking away from it. And so we have to be able to adjust accordingly, to sort of slot them in.
To kind of answer some of that on the standard Realtor contract, it does state in the settlement or default in loans on good stuff, it states that it's the seller's responsibility to pay for that unless the buyer decides, I'll pay for it. So, sorry, I'll pay.
No, thank you for doing that.
And interestingly, though, something I thought of, I mean, if you were to go on your own devices and self-finance whatever your obligation was, someone would be determined by what kind of loan you get. Obviously, if you get a personal unsecured loan, that's different than a HELOC. You just obviously get attached to the property. So that was, to your point, though, take under advisement about giving options.
Just a question online.
Online question, go ahead.
Yes, Unit 110. When does the board anticipate making the final decision on the potential assessment?
Well, to Kyle's point, I think, we have to have the official final number, right? We have to know exactly what we're signing and the precise amount so that we can jive them up with Ginger's estimates, which are pretty dark those, but, to get right down to the penny, right? I mean, so we have to have a contract in place and then we have to decide on the route of funding, and then we would execute funding in support of that. But everything's got to start with the contract.
So we have a board meeting this Thursday.
Correct.
We have a following board meeting about 3-4 weeks later, somewhere in late June. I would hope that by then, even if we have to have a special board meeting in the middle of June to get ready for that, that between now and that regular June 20th-ish meeting, we should probably be ready to have some numbers. I would hope.
When the builder was here and then TDL was here and everything, they said about 5 weeks after we got the LOI, we got the LOI last week. So in theory, in June. Not locking ourselves into a day in June, but a month of June.
Yeah.
Well, and for 607, the timeline, of course, it's a fiscal year and this building July 1st, right? So do you anticipate, and I guess the good news is, for Ginger, you're not gonna have an increase in the condo fee in 2026, right?
That's correct.
But what I'm curious about is, when do you anticipate the kick-in of the assessment, whether it's, the lump sum or a monthly fee? I mean, do you have any feel for that? I mean, we're talking about September, October, or we're talking even sooner? Just curious. I mean, for me, it's not a big issue, but for some, it may be.
So I wouldn't, don't hold us to it, but I would say, like I said, if the contract gets awarded in June, we could probably cover the first couple of months and give people the time to make a decision on, do they want to pay up front or do they want to take the loan rate?
Okay.
While working with the banks to finalize how much we need, because honestly, we need to know how many people are gonna pay up front so we can get hopefully a reduced number to go get a loan,
Right.
which then changes the interest rate. And so I would say probably August, September.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking August, September also.
Well, I think you should, I think Ginger mentioned it, or somebody mentioned it, the bonus of paying up front if you're not gonna pay interest, and it helps also with the loan. I would encourage people, if possible, to, do a pay up front.
If they can, and again, what we're trying,
Maybe there could be a fund for people who have quite a bit of money to help them pay up front. I don't know. I personally am quite, my finances are quite good, so I could do that. I mean, I can pay up front.
With a platform like that, you should run for the board.
If you need a loan, call Ann.
It'd be good if more people paid up front for sure. And it should be encouraged, let's put it that way.
Yeah, less interest. Anybody else online? Let's switch back to.
So
online.
there's another online question. She's still going. So can the board request residents to commit to the upfront payments by email by June 1st, so they know some numbers? They need it ASAP to do the calculations. Don't wait till August.
Well, we won't know by June 1st because we won't anticipate having that contract, in hand. So I mean, I think Ginger, the answer, June 1st is an easy no. I mean, July 1st is a heck of a lot more feasible, but June 1st would be virtually impossible.
Yeah, we'll be able to figure out which condo has to pay once we have the contract.
June 1st is right upon us, so we'll blow
So
out.
it says assume they have 10K available. I think she's looking at what we already have. there,
Well,
but
given
it
the
goes to
numbers,
the-
a worst case number for a middle of the building, mid-sized unit was around $8,000. So I would challenge that if you had $10,000, you could probably cover a high floor in a larger unit. So there's a lot of information provided in that report should help you estimate.
And also just go back to Ann's question real quick. And so you brought up the crossing of the physical years. That's why we also made it to where the operating cost condo fees stayed separate from the project.
Right.
Because we wanted to make sure we went into the physical year having a clean understanding of what we need to maintain the building as far as maintaining the building as well as programming for the future. And we didn't want to risk impacting that by incorporating the windows and door and facade projects. So that's why they're different. Also, they're different so that we have these options of funding it.
And one thing I failed to say and make a point about is we're not only contributing the same amount to reserves as we did the prior year, we're actually adding and increasing the amount that we're putting into reserves and still able to keep the increase to 0%.
The other thing that we didn't bring up is, hey, not having insurance claims, no more fires. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, keep
Keep
doing
it up.
that. Keep doing that.
That's right.
Because that greatly helped us with the budget this year.
So we had
Sure did.
planned, we were anticipating a 15% increase to our insurance and we only had a 3%.
Yeah, 3% increase is fantastic.
How about the no smoking? Does that actually give us any kind of?
I mentioned this to Melina, did the no smoking resolution have any impact on the rates or were those already kind of cooked in? I think those rates were already cooked in.
It might help next year.
It could help next year, right? We had been told at some point along the lines that if we had a no smoking policy, that could
Mhm.
kind of help around the margins. It's not like having sprinklers, but it helps.
Right.
So if you're wondering how we come to 0 when there's still some increases, right? There's some major negatives and one of them is to Kyle's point, and I appreciate him bringing it up, like, let's not have claims on our insurance. So when we had the big jump in insurance cost, our deductible went from like $10,000 to $100,000. And so in the budget, we need to be prepared for that. So that was a big reason why the rates went up in past years, was to cover that 100,000, to put away that $100,000. We didn't use it. So it's there. So we don't have to put $100,000 every year. We've done it once, we put it in reserves, we can earn interest on that. But what we did do is we put 50 in this year. So instead of putting in 100, we can put in 50. Just in case there's a claim this year, we can kind of keep our pool. So that's how we have, we're able to, that 50 off, that taking that 50K out of putting away 100 for reserves 2 years in a row. We only put 50 in this year. That minus 50 accounted for other things that had ups and downs. And that was a big help to helping us to get it to 0. I don't want you guys to think we're doing crazy math. There was like that was a big chunk to how we were able to keep the number at 0.
Spent close to 30 hours the last several months working on the budget.
Any other questions for in person now? Yes.
A lot of people in the building don't know the history of the fires here. They've heard that there were a couple of what happened, but they don't know what happened. So I might encourage us to have a dedicated discussion or something of we've had like 2 fires that I'm very familiar with. Others. You know, how did it happen? What happened? You know, that would be information that's valuable to some people because they don't know.
Yeah, and I recall last year that Mark arranged for somebody to come in from the fire department to give a fire prevention talk, and along the same lines of educating, we might consider doing that. Yeah, just. Anybody else, either in person or online? We're getting to the end of,
Nothing online.
okay, we're getting to the end, so unless there's something burning, no pun intended. Walk into that one. All right, so that will conclude the unit owner Q&A, and so thank you very much. And also, as Kyle just mentioned, he and Ginger formed a working group that worked along with Legman Norman to come to our budget over many hours, so appreciation for all the effort that went into that. And so at this point, I will ask the election committee if they are prepared to report on the results.
Okay, so I think they left that to me.
Or if they've given you the results, then you're the only one that knows them now besides, so Melina will give the results of the election.
So in percentage order.
Oh, by the way, they're both 3-year terms. I just wanted to make sure. that-
Yes, that
Okay.
is, yes, sir. So in percentage order, we have Thomas Sowell at 49.50%, I'm rounded up. Valerie Hardy is at 35%. And Robeson is 23%. I will post the results tomorrow. Make sure everyone online. Okay, no questions. Okay, and that's it. Thank you, everyone,
All
for
right.
participating and making this happen.
So, as a result of those, results just given, the election is as follows. So the elected to a 3-year term are, speaking of myself in the third person, Tom Sowell for a term of 3 years, and then Valerie Hardy for a term of 3 years. So congratulations to Valerie on her reelection, and you accept your, and thank you also to Alex and to putting your name forward to serve your community. And appreciate, Alex, your willingness to step forward, put your name forward. It's having healthy elections is a good part of being a healthy polity. And so appreciate to everybody who participated in the election, whether you ran or not, or just if you were volunteer, it's super important. So the results have been given, and there being no further business before the association, I will officially declare the annual meeting of the Hallmark Condominium Unit Owners Association adjourned at 7:42 p.m.
Beverage at the bar.
Yes, right. To reconvene 1 year hence, at 7 p.m. in this very place.
And we have a regular board meeting this
That's
Thursday.
right. Regular board meeting this Thursday, just FYI, the board is gonna have an organizational meeting at 6:30. There's no unit owner participation at that, but if you wanna come and watch us, text our votes to Melina about the officers. That's cool. The regular board meetings at 7:30. You are welcome to observe the election of officers if you wish, but the main show is at 7 o'clock. So 6:30 for organization, 7 for the regular meeting. See you then, and in the meantime, have a wonderful week. Spring has sprung, and enjoy the nice weather.
And the pool opens soon.
And the pool opens soon.